Craig Lieberman.
When I first started my YouTube channel almost 5 years ago, one of the first videos that I released was the story of my R34 Skyline GTR. That car became the Too Fast, Too Furious GTR. So there's a long story about that. And because I've added more than 200,000 subscribers since the first video about this car, I decided it was time to go over this car. Again, people want a chance to understand the story of the car and what is going on with those cars now, because there were more than one
best
GTR
car
in that movie. The stunt
ever
cars
made.
and the backup cars. So if you already saw the first video I did on this car many years ago, you'll still want to see this videos because there are new developments and a couple of big ones that I'm going to talk about at the end of this video. So we're going to get the updates on this car, tell you how everything started and how it ended. We're going to get to that right after this message. So let me do a quick recap on how this car wound up to be cast in Too Fast and Too Furious. It's an interesting story, and it took me by surprise to be.
For the record, anybody that's tuning in right now, the two of you that are here, the reason I'm watching this guy's named Craig Lieberman. He was the technical director for the first two Fast and Furious movies. He owned this GTR and the orange Toyota Supra and the blue Nissan Maxima in the first movie and second movie. And this is the guy I go to. I hit him up on Instagram. Anytime I have a question about like different cars, like collectible cars I see from ERTL back in early like 2000, 2001, 2002, like cars that weren't in the movie. Right, you'll still find die-cast cars from the Fast and Furious first two movies that were never in the movies, and you kind of wonder like, why did they make a model of this car? So I'd hit up Craig Lieberman, and he would usually either send me back a voice message on Instagram or type out a paragraph on why that car was made. For example, I have a 1969 Shelby GT that they didn't use in the movies, but they made the model anyway under the Fast and Furious brand. But they ended up using that car in Charlie's Angels Full Throttles instead. So like those cool little stories I love.
Soon after I got my Supra back from the first Fast and Furious movie, I thought after that first movie that I was done working with Universal, and I just went on my life, and I said, well, what's next after a Supra? A GTR. So I bought a GTR. In fact, in the months after the first movie was released to the public, Paul Walker and I were traveling to different cities all over the West Coast to promote the Fast and Furious movie. During that time, Paul and I got to be kind of friends, and we talked about cars, about Supras, and I did talk to him about GTRs. I think Sean Morris had a couple of conversations with him, and that was going good. And eventually,
by the way, the warehouse in which they like put all these cars together for like the movies, like painted them and whatnot, ended up becoming a very famous warehouse because of these movies. And the guy that owned it, Ed, died. But before he died, he wrote a book about the cars that they made for the movies, and he signed that book, and I have a copy of it signed.
eventually, Paul and I both went to Motorex at the same time, just kind of look around at GTRs. There was a black GTR there, which was the Blackbird. I looked at it and I liked it, but I hate black cars. Always have, always will. But Paul looked at that car. He said, yeah, black is too much care. He looked at a white one, a silver one. I'm pretty sure he bought one of the silver ones. There's a famous picture with him, his grandfather with that car. Anyway, after that,
this video just came out yesterday. That's why I'm watching it.
We went our separate ways, and I didn't talk to him again until we started working on Too Fast, Too Furious. I want to make it clear that I had no idea that they were going to make Too Fast, Too Furious. I didn't buy that car to put it in the movie. That was not my plan. It was not even a dream in my head. I just bought the car because I want that car. That's the way it was. And then the wheels started turning. So So Paul didn't want to wait for his GTR because it was on order. So basically what happened is Motorrec said, okay, Paul, you can borrow the Blackbird and drive that for a while until your car comes in. This is what got everybody convinced that Paul Walker owned that car before, because while he was driving it, some guys who were doing a DVD, they talked to him and filmed him, and he was driving that car. That car was actually my car, but not yet. I told him I wanted the car, but I didn't give it a deposit. Anyway, my GTR V-Spec, the Blackbird, was the first fully legal GTR in the United States, so it was never at risk for confiscations because it was totally legit. The car was known as the Blackbird, as I said. I paid $78,000 for the car. You can go on the GTR.
Holy shit. $78,000 for it all the way back then? Holy shit. That's a lot of money. For like the year 2000, 2001? God damn. What is $78,000 in today's money? $135,000 today, brand new. Brand new GTRs now are cheaper than what that was. That's crazy.
Industry, and take a look at the 14 cars that did come through Motorx legally. There was 14 to 16 cars. That was the first one. So it was totally legit. And if somebody is telling you something else, they're wrong. I had big plans for this car. I wanted to make it a SEMA show car. I showed this car at SEMA in the HRE booth before I even started doing modifications, and the car was still black. After that, I started to kind of play around with the car with the goal of putting this car in magazines and doing marketing kind of things. That's what I was doing back then. Having done that with several other cars before this, including my Fox Body Mustang and Impala SS and a couple of other cars, this was my jam, and that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, what's funny is that the only reason, if you think about it, this dude was never an import kind of guy. He was a muscle car kind of guy. He drove a Cobra, a Mustang Cobra, and various other muscle cars before he ever got a tuner. And he had a souped up Cobra on the highway, and a Supra beat him in a roll race. The next day, he went and bought a Supra and spent a few weeks like making it look the way it does in the movie, besides like the paint. He didn't have it orange. He had it all yellow. And somebody ended up seeing that car at a car show. They met and they talked about a movie. Next thing you know, Fast and Furious was out, and it was originally called Redline. So crazy. If he never would have gotten beat by a Supra on the highway, this dude might have still been a muscle car guy. And Fast and Furious, which was originally written to have a Dodge Neon as the main car instead of the Mitsubishi Eclipse that Paul drove. Yeah, they wanted a Dodge Neon, and this guy Craig was like, fuck no. That's not happening.
GTR in the United States would probably be a good marketing tool for all these magazines and for the parts that go on them. So I started building the car. This car was my most complex build to date. First, I painted a special candy blue. This was a custom color based on a Lamborghini Diablo color blue. I don't remember the name of it. You have to call my body shop. So I'm not going to give you information about that. You can call them. Why didn't I keep it black? Because magazines don't put black cars on the covers.
Can't take pictures of black cars.
You walk into the grocery store and you see all these car magazines on the rack. None of them have black covers. You know why? Black doesn't catch your eye. You have to think how a magazine publisher thinks. When you walk through the store and you come to the magazine aisle, you'll see all these yellow cars, red, orange, purple, green, because those bright colors attract your eyes there. And then
Same thing for the movies. That's why all of the cars are such bright, vagrant colors, because, you know, it's for movies. Each car's a character. It's really got a pop. And when they rented all these cars from people for the first two movies, they were almost all a form of silver or black or white. And they had to like make them, you know, green, orange, purple, yellow. Like it was pretty cool. And, you know, now we have like the Crayola of colors.
then you walk over there and you open up the magazine because you had a cool looking car in the front. And they said, yeah, I want to see more about this. That's how they sell magazines. As a matter of fact,
they sold me on those magazines, man.
Car on a magazine rack and a red car right next to it, another magazine. It's 30 times more likely that you're going to pick up this magazine and ignore this magazine. Facts, data, hard data. And of course, after I got my car painted blue,
that's
I
debatable.
put a red stripe on it. The red stripe was inspired by the Signal Auto livery. The 2 circles on the trunk was a quick fuel spout. Take a look at this picture right here and you'll figure it out right away. At the first, it was just cosmetic, but it was gonna have a fuel cell. I was gonna do the audio video for a year and then do the car all over again, strip it down.
Man, back in the day when audio video was like key before performance and cosmetic.
Bride seats, get rid of the nitrous system. Well, not the stuff under the hood, but the car was going to be a dual purpose car. And so that was the initial plan, but it didn't get that far. So once the car got painted, we got to work on the rest of the car. We started with upgraded turbos, which were initially IHI6s, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But one had a problem, so we switched to HKS 2530s. Those seemed to work pretty well. While we were doing that, we put a custom 150 horsepower direct port nitrous provided by a company called
Direct port nitrous injection.
At the same time, we also decided to do a new intercooler, and we used one of the Nitrous Express intercooler spray bar, which is installed in front of the intercooler. The concept, if you didn't know, if you blow in ice cold air onto the intercooler, helps keep the engine cooler. Basically, it allows you to make more boost and cooler intake temps, and that's a good thing on turbocharged cars.
Boom, bum, bum, bum.
Soon the engine bay was full of eye candy everywhere I looked. I was buying stuff from all over the world, from the group ImCarbon Kevlar airbox, which I think is the $2,500 back then, and to the genuine Nismo strut tower, which was $1,500 back then.
God damn!
$14,000.
Holy shit!
At any car show, it always would bring a crowd. It was a mess, and I had to, sometimes I couldn't even get near the car. That's what I want to do. Everybody wanted to take magazine shots and all that kind of stuff. Stop Tech created 50-inch brakes for the car, for the front, and 14 in the back. HRE custom built a custom offset for their 446R wheel to fit on the car. A custom roll cage was crafted from my friend who used to work at Eibach, and he's in Utah now, so he did a great job with that. And by this time, the car was starting to getting attention of the magazines. I think I was in 3 or 4 magazines just even before the car came out in Fast and Furious. I was winning trophies at car shows and all that kind of stuff. And that was kind of fun thing because it was a very different time. And then just about this time, Universal announced that there would be a sequel to the first Fast and Furious movie. And I'm like, what? Okay, well, I can't even imagine what the story's going to be. By this time, it was early 2002. This is when Universal called me in the early of the year, and they actually confirmed that they are indeed wanting to do a sequel. No one was more surprised than I was. I can guarantee you that. Again, Universal called me back and said, can we talk, and all that kind of stuff. They hired me basically to facilitate the designing and the building of the tuner cars to use in the movie. But first we had to talk about what cars are we going to use this time. New cars were coming out. Some of the other cars were getting long in tooth, and that's the first thing we did at my first meeting. When I was in there with the movie's director, John Singleton, and the production team, I was told that they had already found the main car for the movie. And the lady across from me said, we have a lovely
See,
car.
told you. They wanted to use a Dodge fucking Neon as the hero car in Too Fast, Too Furious. Like, how dumb. How fucking dumb.
Neon SRT lined up for Brian's car, and I'm losing my mind. The woman, she was part of the production crew. Her name was Melissa Crollo. I will never forget.
It's probably because, you know, even to this day, when a fucking Fast and Furious movie comes out, it's always sponsored by Dodge, man. And it's, you know, the Dodge Chargers or the new Dodge Chargers and shit are in every movies, the Durangos. But back then, I'm sure they had a great offer, like, hey, we'll give you a bunch of free Neons if you use them in the movie. You know what I mean? So if they ever would have used a fucking Dodge Neon, and they never would have made a second Fast and Furious, let alone a first Fast and Furious.
Dodge Neon SRT lined up for Brian's car, and I'm losing my mind. The woman, she was part of the production crew. Her name was Melissa Crollo. I will never forget her, who at the time was in charge of product placement.
What up, Beta Ray
and
Jim?
Marketing. So product placement works like this. Let's say you have a product and you want to see your product shown on screen in a movie. You can do one of two things. You can call up the product placement department, or In this case, the marketing department, which was Dodge, who said,
Exactly.
we want to put our car
Exactly.
in your movie and then produce commercials all about the Dodge Neon SRT as featured in Fast and Furious 47, right? That's what they wanted to do. And what they're doing with Dodge is with Vin Diesel.
Told
right?
you,
Dodge wanted to
yeah.
get their car in the movie in a big way, and in return, Dodge would produce TV commercials to promote the movie starring the Dodge Neon SRT4. Now, I was sitting at the table with John Singleton 2 seats down, and I'm writhing in my seat. I'm like, oh no. And Singleton looks over to me and goes, Lieberman, you got something to say? I said, no, John, I'll wait my turn. And he grabs me and he says, listen, Lieberman, I don't want no booty ass in this movie. If this is booty ass, you need to tell me right now. Swear to God, that's exactly what happened. My other boss grabbed me on my wrist. I was pretty sure I was going to get fired. I strenuously objected to the notion of inserting Dodge Neon, which up to then was a cheap rental car with no reputation of being a performance car. It just didn't fit. So as everyone calmed down, I was rolling through my head, what else does Dodge have? How can we make Dodge happy? I said, why don't we put some Dodge Vipers in there, because we have a scene that we need bad guys.
I have the model of that car.
Dodge Vipers would be great. How about Dodge Ram trucks? We're going to need that.
Ooh, I wonder if they make.
That's the way.
I wonder if they make. eBay, ERTL, Dodge Ram, 1500. Fast and Furious. Or no, Too Fast, Too Furious. Why have I never thought to see if they made one of those? All right, they don't make one. I don't think. Actually, what's this? ERTL Dodge Diecast Racing. No, I want Fast and Furious. They don't make it, as far as I can tell. All right, let's keep it. That would have been cool to have, though, a Fast and Furious model, a 118 model of these Ram trucks, and maybe like one of the fucking cop cars, you know, and just have them on the display case.
Dodge got started in the Fast and Furious franchise. With all of that said,
That's so cool. I never would have thought. I don't know why I never thought of that. That's why those trucks were in there. That's why the Viper was in there. And all of that is because Dodge was still, even though they didn't use the SRT4 as the hero car, they still sponsored the movie.
To pick the cars for the actors. Which actor is going to drive which car? It has.
Can I get in on some Forza seasonals? Probably not. I mean, just the challenges I'm gonna be doing is gonna be starting and restarting races over and over again just to complete the weekly challenges, and then from there I'm probably gonna go to some monthly rivals. But I appreciate it. I've never co-opted though on PC. I tried doing it with a friend last night or the night before, and he's got Forza through Xbox. I have Forza, which is still Xbox, but through Steam. We're having a very hard time getting to like actually like meet up. Even when we try to do like, you know, a car meetup thing, whatever, it's fucking a convoy. We can add each other as friends and shit, but for some reason we can't join each other, which I don't know if Xbox and Forza has that kind of compatibility issues, but yeah.
And that's not easy if you know some of these guys. So I showed my food chain of JDM cars, no big surprise. You got the Skyline GTR, Acura NSX, the Mark IV Supra, maybe Mark III, FD RX-7s, 3000 GT VR4 would be great. Then we looked at other cars like the Imprezas. The Rector wasn't really excited by the Impreza. WRX STI was not in the United States yet. The 350Z was not in the United States yet. It was close. S2000s, which are always great cars, especially in that context. And then we looked at Mitsubishi Eclipses. There was a new Mitsubishi Eclipse that had come out, the third generation. We also took another look at 300 ZX Z32s, which would have been nice. I really like those
240s
cars. I really
though.
wanted to get them in the movie. They just didn't get excited about it. Somewhere in their process, Nissan North America heard about this movie and they sent it over a marketing guy, a rather unpleasant fellow. He was actually acting angry that we asked him to put one of their cars in the movie, and I was like, well, fine, don't do it. I don't give a we already have a Nissan. What? That's car over there. But I'll tell you this.
We already got Godzilla, bitch.
And they put 350Zs in that movie instead of the GTR. I can't imagine how many 350Zs would sell when that movie came out. But it was not to be. So if that guy still is working there, you should find that ticket.
Missed opportunity.
Cars were basically picked. There was a little flipping, flopping, all kind of stuff. Some of the cars they wanted to change. Like I said, It was difficult to make everybody happy. Another thing.
I love this guy. I really do. The fact of like what he is in history. But during the history of his YouTube channel, somebody has had to have told this guy, or needs to tell this guy, to follow the rule of thirds when framing up a fucking camera shot. Like basic camera, like anything using a camera, like 101 is don't put the very middle of the fucking shot right on your forehead. Don't do it. Don't even put it on your nose. You put it on the chin or you put it on the neck. You never put it further than that. Now all of a sudden you got all of this fucking dumb blank unused space. So you're only technically using half of it. You know, he could have zoomed in a little bit, framed up. His head could have been all the way to up here, but that's what you do. It's whether you're taking pictures for weddings, schools, video interviews. It's the rule of thirds. You don't do this. It is fucking annoying. And the fact that he has worked on so many movies and does this in every fucking YouTube video kind of drives me nuts. Or maybe he knows what he's doing just because he wants to fit the flags in. I don't know. But for me, I spent 4 years in film school. This drives me crazy. Absolutely crazy. It happens at work too. People will have like video conferences and they'll have, you know, just their head, you know, it'll be even lower than where this guy's. It'll be all the way down here and you'll see like the crack of the ceiling, part of the ceiling fan. And it's just like, come on. I have too much OCD about it.
That was going on is the guys who work in the picture car warehouse really like muscle cars. So we had one point an Acura NSX was going to be one of the main cars during the barrel race, and the other car I think was, what was it? Toyota MRS wide body, I think we were going to do. But my boss jumped in and said, no, we're going to do a Dodge Challenger and a Chevrolet Camaro. And I had no power to change that because all them old white guys, that's all they like, man. They like them big V8s and 4-barrel carbs, 4 on the fuller, all that kind of stuff. Blah, 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 blah. However, they still needed a good tuner car.
That's a good frame up. Hold on.
All that kind of stuff. Blah, 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 blah. However,
that's a decent frame up, at least. Like, the middle is now on his nose. But it's a little bit better than this.
They still needed a good tuner car for the second part because remember they drive the GTR in the first part of the movie and then they move on to another car because the GTR gets crashed and impounded. So what do? Mitsubishi steps in because they had a relationship with Dodge back then, and they said
you go from a Skyline to an Evo.
We're going to give you Mitsubishi Evo 7s. So they intercepted 4 Evos that were headed to Europe for a rally team, and they sent that over to us.
Oh, that's
and
sick.
So we had to put those cars in the movie, and so that this is the reason that the GTR only made like
I didn't know that.
minutes of appearance, and then they shift over to the Mitsubishi Evo, which wasn't terrible. But all those cars that I list, we didn't actually need to go to buy all these cars. It was pretty bad.
For anyone that's ever seen the movie, the graphic right here on the side of the car is just a picture of the car printed on itself. Like right here is the wheel well and the window of the fucking car. Both pictures. It's just a picture of the car on the car. Mind blowing. Fucking mind blowing.
Terrible. But all those cars that I list, we didn't actually need to go to buy all these cars. We already had many of these cars that were parked in the warehouse in Newhall, California. These were the cars that were left over.
That's the only reason I actually like the first two, like, or collect cars from the first 2 Fast and Furious movies, is because they didn't really have to buy any. They mainly rented them from people who already owned them. And they would maybe like repaint them and add some like stereo equipment and shit. And then sometimes they would offer like a certain amount, like, hey, well, you know, can we keep your car? And a lot of the times people would sell, but a lot of the times they would just give the cars back as well. Like the dude's Mitsubishi Eclipse they used for Brian in the first movie, his main car, the green one. That was another dude's car. Looked exactly like it, was on a whole bunch of magazines. Dude didn't want to sell the car. He's like, no, That's mine. After the first movie, he got the car back with all the upgrades basically and got paid for the rental. And then who knows how much he could have turned and sold that car for. Hundreds of thousands of dollars because it was the main car, you know?
From the first movie, I went to see them. I looked at all the cars. I said, these can be used, these can't be used, or we're gonna have to buy new ones to do modifications again. So the ones that we took, like the Supras and the RX-7s and the Eclipses from the first movie, were reused in Too Fast, Too Furious. You see most of those cars in the warehouse scene, scramble scene, painted different colors, different wheels, different body kits, and all that kind of stuff. But none of those cars got to be really used as main cars for the characters, with the exception of the Slapjack Supra, which was reused from the first movie, and the RX-7s for orange.
I had to create that Orange Julius Supra in Forza because nobody else had made one. Well, they had made one, but it looked fucking terrible. So I made one, and it's gotten so many downloads and kudos since then.
Jack Supra, which was reused from the first movie, and the RX-7s for Orange Julius, which was used for Dominic Toretto in the first movie. And some of those cars now have the pedigree of being not one movie, but two movies. So
keep saying Orange Julius, but Orange Julius had the other car. Slapjack had the orange. Slapjack is the gold Supra. I always get those two confused.
What we needed for the GTRs, we needed 4 GTRs plus the jump car for a total of 5 GTRs. So in total, we needed 5 Nissan GTRs. So we went back to Motorex, it was still in business, and purchased 4 more GTRs. We paid $48,000 for each GTR.
Oh, that's cheap.
From overnight
that's
Japan.
Cheap.
It cost $13,000 to ship them in a cargo hold.
Imagine paying $48,000 today
basically
for an R34.
Paul's workshop and El Segundo. They
God damn, I'd buy one.
Getting some parts together, body kits, and then they went to Florida where we're going to build in the cars. So real quick, let's go over what each car was used for. When I'm talking about each car, I'm talking about the GTRs. We had 5 GTRs.
Swear to God, man. I need an Origel or something.
My car was the Hero 1. It was number 37 on the key list. And if you've ever seen a picture car key list, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, it probably doesn't make sense to you, but you could probably figure it out. The next car was listed as Principal number 2. And this car was basically acting as a backup to my car. And this car was key list number 38. This car had glowing brakes, which a gag we were going to do for a sequence.
That was, they put those on a lot of cars.
It was just basically ultimately cut out of the movie, which
they put them on a lot of cars before they realized this sucks.
The third car was to be a stunt car, and it was number 39, as I recall, on the key list. It had a flamethrower, and if I'm not mistaken, this car had toe tabs as well. And
they used to sell those flamethrower kits in the back of these magazines, like Super Street and whatnot. Man, it always make you think. They had the smoke kits too. But yeah, you just press a button and like flames would shoot out your exhaust. Didn't have anything to do with the performance of your car whatsoever.
This one is the third car chosen to be Principal number 1. This one was number 40 on the key list. It too had a flamethrower setup. What was important about this car, that this car got a lot of screen time with Paul Walker. And then we have the fifth car, which is car number 25 on the key list, was a beautiful EV1 yellow GTR that came to us from Andy from Middlehurst Nissan in the UK. This car was immediately stripped inside and outside and rigged with a massive cage to protect the stunt driver. And so it was really sad to see that car pulled apart.
Sick.
It's sad. In this footage, you can see that the cars are now all painted, and now they're getting into the nitty-gritty. They don't have to install the stereos in those cars because it doesn't need it. My car had the stereo. They didn't need it. Before we sent my GTR to Florida, the car was delivered to West Coast Custom for the audio video equipment. I had drew up a blueprint, dropped it off with Ryan over there. This one, they were still in El Segundo, and in 3 weeks, it was all complete. And man, it was fantastic. It was an amazing thing. I couldn't wait to drive it home. Only my car got the functional audio video because, like I said, stunt cars don't need all that. I'm sorry to repeat this, but I'm going to do it just once.
Repeat?
Let me make this very clear. All of the Skylines in Too Fast, Too Furious were real GTRs. I don't know why people can't get this. In Fast 4, there was only one GTR that they used, and the rest were GTTs. So I'm not sure how this rumor keeps going around, but I'll tell you 1,000% I have the paperwork, legit, original paperwork on every one of them, and I can prove it. Another fact.
There's a 1992 Nissan GTT for sale nearby my place. really good condition, like 20 grand.
All the GTRs used in Too Fast and Too Furious, only mine was legal in the United States because the other cars were brought in as props and they were on temporary import bonds. The Blackbird was the Motor X car, which was used to establish the process. So it was never in danger of being kicked out of the country or banished or anything like that. It was 100%. So what about the other cars? Well, let's take a look at what happened to the other cars after the movie, okay? I sold my GTR to a place called Ride Revolution in Tennessee, which is also known as Motor Mavericks. They immediately stripped the car back to black. Wow, that was a pain in the ass because now that car 4 paint jobs. They ripped out all of the audio video. Eventually the car was sold to a collector. I think it was a museum for a while. Or
like 180 grand? Or was that the Supra?
In New Jersey who works on GTRs. I'm not going to mention his name for privacy, but that's where it is. The jump car was for sale on eBay around 2012. I'm told the car resides in Washington State and that the car sold for something like $70,000, but I can't confirm that. Over the years that followed, at least 2 of these cars surfaced again. 1 or 2 maybe wound up in the car museum. But the years from 2004 to 2013, nobody in the United States really cared about Fast and Furious cars. Nobody was talking to me about it. As a matter of fact, from 2004 to 2017, I never even talked about these movies. Until Paul Walker died, 2013, I've started hearing things about the GTRs. So during that period between 2004 and 2013, one of those GTRs sold for $24,000. But after Paul died, any car that Paul touched went up in value, and it's still going today. I'll give you an example in just a second. Today, Universal Studios still owns at least one, and it has been sitting outside for the tour people for about 15 years, and my math is right, at the Universal Studio.
That's so fucking sad, dude. They could have just put a GTT out there, or a GTS or something, you know, and just painted it, put a body. They could have just gotten a shell of a Skyline, put some fucking seats in it, you know, and put it out. But now an actual Nissan GTR R34 from Too Fast, Too Furious. It doesn't have to be the fact that it's Too Fast, Too Furious, but the fact that it's an actual R34, like, that was beautifully built and it's just sitting outside every day for people to look at when they're in line to ride something. So goddamn sad. So fucking sad.
Tour in Hollywood, California. Paint got all faded. Just recently, thank God, it got a refurbishment. New paint, new graphics, cleaning up the interior, fixing some of the things that were...
Yeah, but how much care? Look at the headlights. It looks like they're faded already. Like, they're oxidized. Like, at least put some time into that, too. All of them, you know? Like, this Eclipse, the Spider Eclipse convertible, is like one of the most expensive collectibles you can get. Like one of the original ERTLs. I paid like, I don't know, $400 for mine. Complete in box, still has the hard, like the top still sealed. I paid like $400 for that fucker.
Cleaning up the interior, fixing some of the things that were in bad repair. Windows are now tinted very, very, very dark so that the sun won't come in and destroy the inside of it. One of those cars found its way to Norway, where a collector literally cut a hole in his roof of his house and then had a crane to gently pick it up and drop into That car is in immaculate shape. I just got pictures of it not too long ago, and having been stored in cold storage, literally, and shielded from any sunlight, this car is an impeccable shape. So as it stands, we know where 3 of the cars are.
This dude cut a hole in his house, dropped it in so people could just, he could just enjoy it. He could just live with it. He could sit on his couch and just stare at it. He could wake up and have coffee with it. Yo, that's balling right there. That is fuck you money. That is, I'm just a fan money right there.
Right? One is in Norway. My old car is in New Jersey. One of the cars at Universal Studios in Hollywood. And there's a guy who has the jump car in Washington State, if my information is correct. There was a rumor that it was at Louisiana. I can't verify that, so I'm going to stick with the Washington State. This is about the time traditionally when people who have been sitting on these cars might want to start thinking about cashing out. The economy is not doing very well. We're going to be in an election year next year, and this is about how the people do it. They hang on for 10 to 20 years and then they cash out. If any of those 3 GTRs would go to, and this was a question that got me to do this video, what do you think these cars are worth today? If I did some back envelope calculations, and I'm thinking if the FF4 went for 1.3 and change with fees, I have to think that it's possible that a Too Fast, Too Furious GTR could post up a bid close to that. I've heard
1.4 mil,
$750,000, $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million. What is going to be? The only barometer we have is a couple years ago, a Supra that was used in the first movie and repurposed in the second movie sold for $550,000, and it wasn't very accurate. The outside had the right stuff, definitely screen used.
If I remember right, it was like the most expensive movie car ever auctioned off.
It didn't have nitrous and all that. The trunk was completely empty, so it was a different thing. But I said it was going to sell about 500 or 600 or 550, so I got that one. So I don't want to speculate, because if that happens, I don't want to be accused of like, it's political and all that kind of stuff. So, but I can tell you this: what I am.
That is crazy to think about. If the guy who actually owned the car from Too Fast, Too Furious, the Skyline, eventually, sells down the line, exchanges hands, and then someone asks him how much it would be worth, and he says 500, 600,000, and then it goes for auction at 550,000. The next time somebody's going to sell that car, they're going to go back and ask him how much it'd go for today, and they would reference that and use that as like a selling point. So if he said again like 500,000, that's how much any buyer is going to say. That's how much I'm paying for it. Unless you're just a huge fan and you just really want the fucking car. But most of these people are buying shit for like the appreciation value. So the fact that this one dude bought the car and dropped it into his living room, it says more that he's a fan and just wants the car than how much it is worth. Unless he's the type of person that just has that many cars in his house. But I feel like because he specifically cut a hole just to put this car in, that he probably doesn't have any other car unless he cuts a hole in his house every single time he wants to put a car in there, rather than just putting like a permanent big door or like a removable section. Like that's the only person that's really like preserving this car in time. He's putting it in a temperature controlled environment. A place where, if he's got the money to put drop a car into his house, he's got the money for like maids and like personal mechanics and shit, I'm sure, to like make sure that car is immaculate always, never going to, really, really slowing the time it'll take for that car to be nothing.
Movies are commanding higher prices than most of the other cars from the other Fast and Furious movies. Not because the older cars are better, it's just that they were more interesting. All the cars that they're doing is dodge this, dodge this, dodge. All they have is roll cage and stuff in there for stuntmen. There's no stereo stuff, there's no character to the car. Maybe a giant fake blower sticking out of the hood, fake fuel cell or fake rocket engine. Everything you saw in the cars in the first 2 movies was real stuff, audio systems, nitrous stuff. It's just a little different now. Or some people are just nostalgic, and that's the way it goes. So if you're going to be looking at buying cars from the Fast and Furious movie, unless you're really in love with late model GTXs, Dodge cars or anything, I think the cars that are going to make the most money at auctions are going to be the cars from the first 2, maybe 3. So that's it for this episode, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Fuck the third one.
We'll see you
the
next
third
time.
one is when they started when they started just buying everything. They had the budget for everything. You know what I mean? Even though they didn't have Paul Walker, they didn't have Dominic Toretto, they didn't have all that stuff. All they had was the cars basically, and the new dude, Sean. That's crazy to think about. The first 2, like those are the ones that are going to be worth the most. They always will. Is the first 2. They had the most heart, the most history. They were the go-getters. They started everything, and that's why I got a whole wall of just those fucking cars that I'm hoping one day will be worth a lot. Don't get me wrong. I still feel like I could sell those for a car. I could probably go buy that that GTT or that GTS, whatever is out there.